This is the Danger Close podcast, Beyond the Books with me, Chad Carr. Welcome to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. My next novel, Only the Dead, hits shelves this spring and is available for pre-order now. Go to officialjackcarr.com, click on Only the Dead to get a little sneak peek. My guest today, Chad Robichaux. He is a former Recon Marine, MMA fighter, and he went to Afghanistan during the withdrawal of U.S. forces in 2021 with a team and got out 17,000 people. Incredible story. His new book is called Saving Aziz. It is out January 17th. Be sure and pick that up. Now, without further ado, Chad Robichaux. Chad, what's up, man?
Hey, man, how are you?
Dude.
Thanks for making it happen.
Thank you for being understanding about pushing it an hour or two. So thank you.
I get it.
Teeth are looking good, buddy.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah.
Nice. Gosh.
Yeah, they were not looking. They were kind of looking like my Louisiana roots this morning.
Dang. How did you lose those things originally?
And it's embarrassing. Oh, jiu-jitsu.
There you go.
They kept chipping and breaking in jiu-jitsu, and I had a lot of MMA fights, like 20 pro fights, and so just over the years they were pretty chipped up. So I had a friend of mine who's a cosmetic dentist said, put some veneers on there. I never wanted to do it. I didn't want to look like a televangelist.
Yeah.
But and then I broke the temporaries off yesterday eating a mango.
Even the mango. Those mangoes will get you.
Yeah, nothing super sexy about it. If they get punched or kicked or anything, it was eating a mango.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Dude, I don't even know where to start. I mean, Marine, MMA, 8 deployments to Afghanistan, meeting Aziz, going through all this stuff. Saving Aziz is the book. I think we need to start at the beginning, though. The draw to the Marine Corps, like, where did that come from? And what was your path into the Corps?
Well, my dad was a Marine. We have 84 years of service in my family.
Wow.
And my dad was the first Marine. We did World War II, Korea. My dad was an infantryman in Vietnam. Wow. And even though, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home because my dad probably never got help for the things he dealt with for Vietnam. He was always, the only thing that ever seemed to make him happy was the fact that he was the United States Marine.
Wow. And
that always really appealed to me. And I grew up in southern Louisiana and bayous and swamps and mud between my toes. And I had a brother, he was a year older than me, and we'd always be out, playing and in the woods. And I remember when the movie, not the movie Navy SEALs, but there was this documentary you probably seen, filmed in Coronado.
The Discovery Channel one, the first Discovery Channel one.
Back in the 90s.
Yeah. There was one they followed a class through. I forget what class number it was. I think it was called class something, but they had one before that in like right in the mid 90s. Oh, recruiting one? Okay.
Yeah. It was probably in the 80s. Yeah, it was in the 80s.
Oh, then I think I know which one you're talking about. I think I might have it actually on my phone. I've been waiting for the right time to post it. Is that the one where they're running
down in the strand and they drop some demo?
Yeah, I think it's the right. Yep, I think so. I think I have that exact one. Do you remember there's a part where they come on it's a bunch of bunkers or something like that, and the guys fast rope and they run in, and someone throws a smoke and they're like running through the smoke into that. I remember that one, and I think I have it. I think I'll have to post it.
Yeah, me and my brother seen that, and we were like, man, I was like, I want to do that, but I was like, I don't want to join the Navy, and so it was the fact that my dad was a Marine, and I wanted to follow his footsteps, and so I remember I was like 13 years old, and like, what's like a Marine? I learned about Marine Recon, and I started reading these books. 3rd Recon and 3rd Force Recon in Vietnam. And as a teenager, I became infatuated with that. And me and my brother were like lifelong athletes. And so we were running and swimming. And about a year into that, my brother was shot and killed. And it was just really devastating to me. I was 14, he was 15 at the time. And what I had left of family broke apart. And I went to kind of a deep isolation, but I kept that focus and goal to join the Marines. And when I was about 17 years old, I was living alone with my 20-year-old sister. And I probably wasn't going to graduate high school. And I went to a Marine Corps recruiter named Staff Sergeant Brown and really just told him my story and the situation I was in. And he helped me get in the Marine Corps. 1993, 17 years old without even a high school diploma. So I signed an infantry contract. And that first year I tried out back then it was called the RIP program, and tried out for the RIP program, Recon Indoctrination program. And miraculously, I made it through at that young age and became a recon Marine, and so many great jobs in our military, but there's probably not any more that was more fitting for me, especially at that time in my life.
Man, yeah. Marine Corps boot camp, that's like the ultimate rite of passage. Everybody knows about it. Everybody's heard about it. And it's a draw. And I think everybody's got that draw, but some people listen to it and follow it. And then, some people don't. But in a lot of societies, you had to do something like that to become a part of the tribe, and the Marine Corps boot camp is like, that's the thing.
Agogé of the Spartans.
Exactly. Exactly right. Man, what happened to your brother?
So my brother was with he had another stepbrother from another side of our family that was 11 years old, and they got into argument, and my brother had a fire poker and the other kid picked up a 20 gauge shotgun, and they were so we'd never know if he shot him on purpose or just it went off, but it was point blank range in the chest, and he died instantly. And so like I said, we grew up in a very dysfunctional home, and something like that happening, just my mother couldn't handle the loss of a kid. My dad didn't want to deal with it. He went work overseas. My mother went live with her family. And, and so at a young age of 15 years old, I was living with my 20-year-old sister who was going to college and working and trying to go to high school. And like I said, I would have not have graduated high school. And I get the chance to go speak at Marine Corps boot camp for now 8 years now.
Wow.
I've spoken to 450,000 troops in the last 12 years. And where I go most is Marine Corps boot camp. And every quarter I speak to these kids and I'm like, when they come here and they stand on these yellow footprints, the opportunity that I don't even think they realize it is, but I think back at my time standing on those yellow footprints at Marine Corps boot camp, and you had this chance to start your own trajectory in life. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, if your dad was rich or poor, or if you lived in the trailer park or the projects, you have a chance right there to change your own trajectory. And I'm thankful that at young age 17, I knew it was an opportunity for me to leave where I was coming from and have something better for myself and my future family. And I really just I don't know how I had that maturity, but I really embraced that. And I think I was just in my mind, clad in my mind, like I want to be a recon Marine. And I never thought about how hard it was to be if I was prepared. I just what I wanted to do. And I was committed to do that and fulfill that goal that my brother and I had started.
Yeah. Did you go to San Diego or did you go to Parris Island?
I went to San Diego. My dad went to San Diego. Both my sons actually went to San Diego.
Whoa.
So, yeah, both my sons are Marine. One's an Afghanistan veteran as well.
Wow. No way.
There's a lot of international stuff I do now with me. And yeah, so San Diego's kind of, the family tradition.
Jeez.
So.
Wow. Do you remember if you had any drill instructors that had the bubble on that you knew were recon? Did you see anybody walking around and catch that, or did you know what to look for?
I didn't, because recon Marines don't typically get to be drill instructors because they don't typically get to do B billets, which is like drill instructor recruiting because of embassy duty, because the Marine Corps put so much money, they want them to keep them there. And but there was a guy who was what's called the McQuist, Marine Combat Instructor of Water Survival. So he was really big in the water, and somehow I don't recall how, but I expressed to him that I want to be a recon Marine. You remember him really saying, okay, you need to get like first class swim qual or WSQ and boot camp, which is like the high swim quals. That way you don't have to do it when you get to the fleet. It's immediate like qualification to be able to go to BRC, basic recon school. So I remember he helped me to make sure, because in boot camp, they don't care. They're processing people through, so they don't care if you get that qual. And so this drill instructor really set me up by making sure that I got that high swim qual and was able to go take that NDOC and be qualified to go to BRC, basic awesome. Recon course, which by the way, back then it was in Coronado next door to Bud's.
Okay. Yeah. Right across the street. Yep. Yeah. I remember it well. It's not there anymore.
No, they still do the third phase, amphib phase there, but they built an amazing compound in Camp Hillen at the School of Infantry. Okay. And so they have this, it's incredible. I mean, I'm super proud of like the recon community now, because like they have this incredible facility. They have a pipeline so the kids could sign up through the recruiter, and the pipeline's a year long. So they go to what's called they go to Marines Away Recon Training, then basic recon prep course, BRC basic recon course, and then they go to pre-scuba, combat dive, jump, SEER school, and then a free fall. So when they show up at their unit after your pipeline, oh wow, they're like ready to go. And so now they're all schooled up. Nice. And then the corpsmen, the SARC corpsmen, and Navy SARC corpsmen, they do all of that. In addition to that, they do the year-long 18 Delta. Yeah. So everybody shows up to command like spun up, ready to deploy.
That is serious. And what jump school do you guys go to now?
Still Army jump school, but we have our own. I went to military free fall, the Army. I went to Army MFF.
Yuma?
And Yuma, yeah,
me too.
I did brag for a week, and
yeah, I did the same one. What year did you go?
99.
Oh, that was 2000. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So a year apart. Yeah. Matter of fact, I just went recently back there and spoke. I did a speaking event, and the guy's like, "Hey, do you still have your plaque?" And I'm like, "Man," and he took me to the same and I'm like, it was a toilet seat, and he said, and we had like "We Are the Shit" on it.
No way.
And he took me back to that same parallel. It's the same one you went to, and it's still there. All the plaques are on the wall, and my plaque was there. And I remember looking at it because a couple of guys from our class had been killed, and looking at it and get snaps of pictures of it. But yeah, it's all that's still there the same way as when you went in 2000.
Okay.
But Marine Corps has their own now. And,
okay. Got it. So they did their own deal. Did I remember? I don't know if we even have a plaque for our class. We lost 2 guys in the course, an instructor and a student. They hit heads. You know, like anyway, it was we'd go search for them in the desert, and we had one jump after that. You know, night combat equipment, the hey-ho thing, whatever that last one is you need. So we had to. I think we took a stand down of a good week and a half, safety stand down, 2 weeks maybe. So we had to find the bodies, then do the whole memorial, and then the safety stand down investigation, and then we had to go back for that last one. But and what do you guys do? The dive school.
We have a Panama City.
Okay.
It's a 8-week dive school. You know, open circuit and then closed circuit. For me, you know, LAR 5, Mark 25, but now they're getting on the bigger and better equipment.
Oh, really? Yeah. I know people ask me questions and I'm kind of like, I'm a little dated, you know, right now. So unless I'm researching it for a book, you know, my information is going to be a tad bit dated. Did your dad talk about Vietnam at all to you growing up?
Never did. He never did. He was just he would get pretty fired up about the Marine Corps and about infantry, but he would never really get into Vietnam.
Yeah.
You know, he was a lot of alcohol, a lot of physical abuse in our family, and he was just a very violent, angry man. And ultimately, he died at 63 years old. I think he just lived a terrible lifestyle, drinking, smoking. I didn't know at the time he hid it well, but drugs and just. But we actually had some pretty good reconciliation in my other book. I know that we talked about this one today, Saving Aziz, but an Unfair Advantage. I talk about that restoration in our life, and ultimately I became a Christian, and ultimately was able to pray with him at the end of his life, and we had that reconciliation at the end of our lives together. So end of his life together. So it ended up being a rough life, but a good ending.
Yeah. So. Yeah. How about, was your grandfather Korea, Vietnam? Is that, World War II. Did he talk about World War II and Korea?
It was my uncle. It was my grandfather's brother but both his brothers, one did Korea, one did World War II. Okay. And they both talked about it a lot. It's the opposite of my dad. They were really talking about it, especially Korea. Obviously we heard the stories of how cold it was, but talking about how cold it was, and both of them were Army infantry. Okay.
Jeez, is that what stands out most? The cold, or is it?
Yeah, that's what you always talk about, how cold it was, and we're from Louisiana, so.
Good point.
So.
Good point. What do you remember them saying about World War II? Do you have the Pacific or what theater they were in?
I actually at the time I didn't. I remember him talking a lot about it, but at the time I didn't know enough to ask. What it was. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. And there's a book. There's a book about it, and I'm trying to find it. There was a book written about my uncle that was in World War II, and he's a Robichaux, and about his unit. And so I'm trying to find and locate this book. I've just heard about it.
Oh wow.
And I'm super interested in finding it. So I'm on this.
Gotta track that one down for sure.
Because it's about my family's kind of military heritage starting, and up until now, my youngest son, my oldest son did 6 years. My youngest son got out because he chose not to get the vaccine and got other than honorable discharge, which is one of the things he was like, I don't want to get it, and I supported him not getting it. I wouldn't have got it myself, and so yeah. He chose to get out, and that's how family service ended. So.
That is crazy. Is there I heard there was some people trying anyway retroactively, because now you don't have to, right? And now, but they're not grandfathering anybody that got out or refused before that, I guess.
That was what I was a little bummed about, that bill that they had passed. They were able to get it passed and not do future, but they didn't think about the 7,000 people that had already been put out and going back and making things right for them. And so hopefully, this new Congress will do the right thing and help reinstate their their benefits. And not only that, but some of them, I know a lot of them still want the opportunity to serve.
Yeah.
And my son would probably go back, and he was on active duty, but he would more likely go back into reserves.
Yeah.
And finish his time out. So.
Yeah. Man, that's wild. So what was your path like then from boot camp up to September 11th? Where'd you go? What'd you do?
I mean, I was at multiple recon units, and I went in. And sounds like I was in similar time frame to you, but I went in 93. So from 93 to 2001 was lots of training, lots of training, and lots of schools, and we did what's called JTF 6 missions down in the border, and did a lot of counter drug operations. But during a peacetime military, we're itching for something to happen. And unfortunately, I came at the cost of 9/11. And when 9/11 happened, I was a free fall team leader. I was the sergeant at 3rd Force Recon Company. And, I knew at that time, like with my job, like, man, life's about to change. Like the world's about to change and my life's going to be much different. And I was itching to go. I thought we were going to deploy right away. And I didn't. And I remember it's like the steam, like just came out of my sails, because I was like so itching to go. And so I had an opportunity, a very fortunate opportunity to try out for a JSOC task force and go work with you guys' premier unit in SW. And I spent 4 years there and as an AFO, advanced force operator, and doing all the clandestine logistics to put our assaulters on target to capture or kill bad guys. And I never knew that job existed before. So I did this assessment selection, got selected, and was one of six recon Marines that got to go to that command. And probably one of the things I'm most proud of in military service, to get to serve in that command and do that job and be entrusted with that, that level of responsibility. It was an incredible experience.
Wow. That probably was going to come in handy later to get these guys out of Afghanistan. I mean, learning how to do all that sort of thing.
Doing singleton operations and doing all the clandestine logistics, building a cover and a reason to be in a certain place. And those things, definitely came in handy with the operation that we did in Afghanistan and some of the work that we've done in Ukraine over the last year. And so those experiences and skill sets definitely carried over.
Yeah, man, you have been busy. Geez. So where were you on September 11th?
So I was September 11th. I was in Louisiana, and I remember turning on the news, and I was sitting on my couch, and my wife was like trying to get my attention, and I'm like, "You got to come sit." So she can't. I'm telling her she had to come sit next to me, and she sat right next to me. And I remember just watching the television and trying to process. Like, I mean, I would just remember processing it like this is intentional. I remember just thinking that like this is an accident. A plane didn't accidentally crash in these buildings. And when a second plane hit, I think everybody knew unquestionably at that time, like we're under attack. And I remember, like, I don't know if you remember going to your unit, but I remember going to the unit and no one was like, oh my gosh, everyone was like, hey, what's up, sir? Like, let's go make this happen. Let's go do it. And I mean, the unit was like just chomping at the bit. And, it was, but I didn't get to go right away.
Yeah.
First force went, and then second force went, and we augmented second force. Our unit augmented second force, and then we got allocated to Iraq.
Okay.
And so I was like I was scheduled for deployment in Iraq. I started doing a workup, and then that's when I got picked up on that task force. And I remember I had worked with this guy Foster Harrington for 10 years. We had been multiple units together. We went to recon school together, and he was just one of my best friends. Served him a wedding. He was my assistant team leader. I was a team leader, and we're doing the workup for Iraq. And then I left to go over to the task force, and he ended up taking our team. And a month in Iraq, he was shot and killed. And I remember just like that being the first big loss that I took, and just it was devastated. And I was in Afghanistan already, so my wife going to his funeral, and I couldn't be there. And she had told me how he had a son that he was about to get married and adopt this kid. The little kid throwing himself in the coffin, like, you were supposed to be my daddy. Like, and that was the first big loss that I had. And, so that was
brutal.
Yeah.
That scene has played out, so many times over the last 20 years. Oh man. We were deployed already. So we thought for sure we were going. we thought we were so lucky. We were already, because it was 2 weeks into my second deployment. And so we're in Guam and we're like, all right, we're going for sure. And yeah, no. Well, I mean, we went, but we while we were in the air, they switched us. Instead of going to Afghanistan, we ended up going to Kuwait and taking over for SEAL Team 3. Those guys ended up going into Afghanistan. We took over the shipboarding operations, which before September 11th it was pretty cool to do. Something real. After September 11th, that's not what you wanted to be. You wanted to be in Afghanistan. But then everybody else at home thought they were going to miss it. Everybody was like, oh, we missed it. I can't believe it. Because everything from Vietnam up to then had been a flashpoint. If you weren't at Desert One, if you weren't at Grenada, if you weren't at Panama, if you weren't in Mogadishu, you missed those flashpoints. And
it wasn't a 20 year.
Yeah. And then it was not it ended up not being you were going to get after it if you stayed in,
I mean, I would have never thought I'm itching to go. I would have never thought, not only am I going to get to go 8 times, but my son's going to get to go too.
How crazy is that? I mean,
right.
And there's a bunch of different families who have had that happen. I mean, it is crazy. He could have, just thinking about that timeline, 20 years. I mean, you could have not been born on 9/11 and still gone there. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. When did you get into MMA along the way?
I started jiu-jitsu when I was 5. I started judo and traditional jiu-jitsu when I was 5 years old. And in 1995, I started Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And then I never desired to be like an MMA fighter or anything like that. It was kind of natural progression of competing. And I've just been a competitor my whole life. And it was just the next way to compete. At one point, I think I did my first MMA fight in 97, my first pro one in 99. I did it on a side while I was in the military. And then when I came home, so I did my 8 deployments to Afghanistan, terrible end to our deployments. We had a compromise. We had 12 of our teammates killed, 2 Americans and 10 Afghans. And a lot of people probably don't think the Afghan thing's a big deal, but to me it was. These are my brothers, so that's who I lived with. That was my teammates, and I believe they died for me. And so I'd already been under a lot of anxiety and stress, and the wheels really began to fly off for me. Came home after that last deployment, was diagnosed with PTSD. I had already switched from being an active duty to having a direct contract with the command. That was that. So I was still working in the same capacity, but as a direct contract. So I was right out of the program and I was done. And the only thing I knew how to do besides that job was MMA. So I dove into, I didn't like the pills and medicine and all that stuff. And I dove into those mats and then started training, and I opened a school and ended up with 3 years, I had 1,000 students, and I got back to fighting and won a world title. I was ranked number 6 as a flyweight, number 15 as a bantamweight. So surface wise, it looked like I was doing really successful, but man, I was not getting healthy, and I really spiraled. And at the end of that 3-year period, while MMA is something I love, and I'm still a 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I still train, I was not getting better. And I ended up almost divorcing my wife after, and separating from my wife. We moved into 2 separate apartments, and while we're separated, I had fought this big fight on Showtime, and after that MMA fight was over, it was Showtime in an event called Strike Force. And people that are MMA fans might, for me at the time, it was UFC owned it. It was the second biggest show in the world, and I fought in the Toyota Center in front of 10,000 people. And out of my wins, I was 18-2 professionally, and 17 of my wins are by submission. 1 is by decision, and that was this fight. I would back and forth with this kid Humberto de Leon. Every round he knocked me down. Every round I knocked him down, and I couldn't finish him with a submission. And at the end, I remember it was a split decision. They called one judge called for him, one judge called for me, and the third judge called for me. And I was like, I couldn't even remember what happened because we had been hit so many times. But I remember when I won, my hand being raised, and all these people were screaming. It was 10,000 people in this. Tim, my friend, I think you know Tim too. Tim Kennedy was fighting that night, and we had so many people there. It's 10,000 people were screaming. It's super deafening. And then my mind just kind of went blank, and I'm standing there just thinking, all these people here, and not one of them was my wife, because my wife wasn't at that fight. She'd always been in my fights before. And I remember thinking I just fought so hard to win this stupid fight on my record, and I'm not fighting for my family. And I went home with my head down, just super depressed. And I remember people were trying to talk to me you won. And I remember Tim lost a close fight to Jacare, and we had our after fight party together. And And I was just like, I just wanted to go home. And I went home by myself, and I'm laying in my bed, and my mind spinning. And I remember thinking, like, my family might be sad without me, but they would be better off, right? I was thinking, like, I'm destroying my family. My wife and kids are like going through this hard time because of me. They'd be sad without me, but they'd be better off. And you and I both know that same hopeless thought finds a home in the hearts of 20-something veterans every single day. But I made a decision I was going to take my life, and I sit in my closet. I had a Glock 22 40 caliber pistol, and I put it to my head, and I put my family pictures on the floor around me, and I put it to my head, and I tried to build up the courage to pull that trigger. But I believe this one thought I believe it was divine. This one thought would like overwhelm me, like, who is going to find me? Like, somebody's going to hear the gunshot. You're not going to show up somewhere. Like, someone's going to find you. And the only person that had a key to my apartment besides me was my oldest son, Hunter, who was 13 at the time. And the thought of him finding me that way was enough to pump the brakes. But I was in such a bad place that I was back at it like hours or next morning. And there was one morning I was in that closet and I heard a knock at my door. And I wasn't going to answer it, but my wife announced herself. And I kind of panicked when she did. And I hid that gun under a blanket. Well, she was my closet. She would never came in there. But probably the level of shame was just, I hid that pistol. And I went to the door, and may sound twisted or stupid, but I was so mad at her for interrupting me killing myself that I just like started screaming at her and yelling at her, like, what are you doing here? She's not a very calm arguer, by the way, but in this moment, like, she was like super calm. And she was like, we had met when we were 17 and 18 years old. So she saw me do all this stuff like BRC, the schools and deployments, training for fights and cutting weight, the discipline like that we have, in these occupations. She's like, how could you do all of that? And when it comes to your family, you'll quit. And there's probably no more soul cutting word to me than to be called a quitter. And she was absolutely right. I've been successful at professional things, but when it came to the most important things in my life, like being a husband, being a father, being a young 17-year-old kid that I was saying, raised his hand and made a commitment to do something important. I quit all those things, including my will to live. And I made a pretty radical decision in that moment to get back on track and pull my life back together. And the MMA environment for me, while it could be healthy for some people, I believe, teach like holistic fitness all the time, like mind, body, spirit, social, the pillars of resiliency. And I believe you have to be, jiu-jitsu brings mental strength and physical strength and a social connection, but it doesn't have that spiritual pillar. And while I think it was a healthy environment, it was a really enabling environment for me, because I surrounded myself with people that told me everything I wanted to hear and not the hard things that I needed to hear. And I needed some people to hold me accountable to getting well. And so my wife had been going to this church where we were separated, and I wasn't interested in God or church or anything, but I knew she knew people outside of my circle. So I said, if there's some man at this church that can hold me accountable, that making some changes and getting back on track. And I met this man named Steve Toth, and we met at a Starbucks coffee shop, and I remember meeting him. And I had written a 5-paragraph order, like an ops order, of how I was going to put my life back together. I really wanted him to show it to my wife, because now I'm trying to win her back, because I'm very goal oriented. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to show you this, and you're going to show it to my wife, and everything's going to be fine. And I remember sitting across from him and showing him this plan. And he looked at his plan without even reading it. And he told me I was going to fail. I remember being like super offended, because like, you didn't even look at it and you're telling me I'm going to fail. But he tapped in a paper and he said, if this plan doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God, I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm not going to let you waste mine. And in my life, I've been on medication, I've been through the VA, all these programs, and I had financial success and professional success, all this stuff. Nothing had really changed anything. Some of those things are good, some of those things are bad, but none of those things really changed my situation. And so in that moment, I made a decision to become a Christian. I surrendered my life to Christ. Beyond that decision, Steve mentored me for about an entire year on biblical living. And what that really did for me was, obviously I still had anxiety, depression. I still got mad and the temper tantrums, all that stuff. But I was able to have a blueprint to respond differently with these biblical principles. And I started to gain control of my life. And what I really discovered was all these bad things that happened to me in my childhood, Afghanistan, losing friends, and all that stuff. As bad as those things were, those things didn't lead me to a closet with my pistol man. What led me there was the choices that I made in response to those things. And I realized, I still had control of the choices I made. And now this biblical mentorship was giving me a good set of decisions to make in response to these things. And so through that intentionality, I began to find, restoration and in my own anxiety and depression. I found hope again. And by the way, restoration of my marriage, because we've been married 27 years now. My kids are all married. 2 of them went to Bible college. 2 of them were Marines. I got 2 grandbabies and 1 on the way. So we have amazing, family that I'm super proud of. And but I found hope again. And I also found, I think what we all seek most and why we put on that uniform is purpose. Yeah. And, when I was on active duty and then when I stayed in the command to do that job, I felt like I had a tremendous sense of purpose. So my whole world, my whole identity was tied to that purpose. And the problem with these jobs is it's great to have purpose, but when that job gets pulled away and our purpose is tied to that, our identity is tied to that, and it really is a very hollow spot that we find something to fill it with, and nothing will ever feel the same. And so that lack of purpose, I think, was one of the biggest things that guys that end up where I was at, and this veteran suicide thing and all this anxiety and depression, is that void of purpose. And for me, when I found this kind of new life and this new direction, I felt like I found my purpose again. And really, it was to share what I discovered with others that were dealing with the same thing I had. So I felt like it's not like I wanted to start a nonprofit and help veterans. It was like I had found the cure of cancer, and I had to share it, right? If you're dying of cancer and you get the cure, you have to share it. And so that manifested in the founding of the Mighty Oaks Foundation and the main work that I do today.
Yeah, man. In reading Saving Aziz, that was the thing that really stood out to me, was this message of hope that was kind of woven through, and that really stood out to me and differentiated it. Obviously, it's an incredible story in and of itself, but to frame it in a way where you don't directly say it, but you feel the hope from it, that really made this book stand out to me. And I don't have it right now in front of me because it hasn't come out yet. I got an early copy. Yeah, I got an early. I think you sent it to me. Did you send PDF or however I read it?
Yeah, PDF.
So I did.
Yours got sent in the mail today, actually.
Nice, awesome, because it comes out on the 17th. Thank you so much. But I ordered it as well, so I'll have two. But yeah, it comes out January 17th. But man, it was when your wife interrupted you in the closet. Then how long was it before you went and sat down at Starbucks with that guy? What were your initial actions after your conversation with her in the doorway or wherever you had that conversation in the apartment?
It was probably like a week, because I was like, my response was, she left and she left me there. But I remember just telling her like, I want to fix this. Like, I'm going to do that character and work ethic you're talking about. Like, I'm going to put the same work ethic in to fixing this, even if I have to sleep on the back porch, you don't have to let me back in. But I'm going to put the work in. And again, I just didn't know how to do it. So I knew I needed support, but I was really worried. And no offense to any people that were in my life at that time, but I had systematically pushed accountability out of my life, and I was extremely. And people told me what I didn't want to hear. I was as a jiu-jitsu black belt at the school. Like, anytime when you're in the military, you have a lot of accountability. But when you get out, if you establish yourself, it's pretty easy to live life. I'm sure where you are in your position in your life right now, you're very successful. You have the ability to not have accountability in your life. I'm in the same position right now. I could, but I choose to intentionally put accountability in my life. And that was something I knew I needed at the time.
Man, so during that week, did you worry you were going to end up back in that closet with that pistol? What did you do during that week before you sat down at that Starbucks?
I did. I was really battling that week. I remember clearly, like, I was really battling that week with, like, I'd be in moments of like, nope. Cause I'm very like all in or all out personality. I think it's the wrestler background. Like, you're either on diet or you're like killing the buffet. Like, you're like some all in or all out meant personality. And so I'm like, I would be like in these moments to where like 100% committed I'm in. And then I'd be like, I'd realize the amount of work I had in front of me. And I also didn't know that I didn't believe in myself at that time, that I had the ability to repair the damage that was done, because I had caused so much damage. I had an affair. I never physically harmed my wife and kids, but like, I always talk about this one moment where I came back from Afghanistan and my daughter was having a birthday, and she was so excited Dad was gonna be home for her birthday, and she didn't like the icing on her cake, like something super simple, and she said something about it. And like picked up my little girl's birthday cake and picked up her cake and threw it against the wall and destroyed her birthday. And just like, I was just so out of control. Like, me and my wife were arguing in the car. We couldn't even tell you, probably 5 minutes later, we were arguing about, but the kids are in the back seat of our car. And we're in traffic, and I start trying to kick the gear shift off the car. So we're stuck in traffic. Like, what I put my family through was like, it's embarrassing to say, but that's just where I was at that time. And I was just so out of control. And I had caused so much damage, and my wife had lost so much trust and faith in me. Like, to think that me gaining her trust back and her confidence back ever again like it just felt like an impossible goal that I was taking on. So that would lead me back to, man, what am I going to put myself through this for to end up right back where we are? I tried so many times and I'm going to let them down again. I'm going to, not be able to deal with her rejecting me or turning her back on me because she can't deal with my attitude. And so I'm going to turn to another woman. Like, I just didn't feel like I had that in me. And so it'd lead me back to that. And then when I met with Steve, I just really I was so manipulative at the time. Like I really wanted him to be able to be the one to convince her that I was. So that's why I took my time, wrote this big life plan. And I knew that's what she wanted to see. She wanted to see some efforts out of me. But the problem with Steve was, Steve never served in the military. He wasn't an MMA fighter or anything in common, but the one gift he had to help me was his ADD, like really bad. And this guy still to this day, we're friends and we'll go eat at a restaurant and he like grabs his keys and runs across the parking lot because walking's like a waste of time. And why that was a gift is because I was like so manipulative and wanted to like convince him of this. He didn't have the time or patience to hear me trying to manipulate him. He was just like, yeah, this plan you have is not going to work. Like he was just so sharp with me. Yeah. And he was just really bold with me. And no one had really been that bold to me in a long time. Like really like put me in my place and challenged me and really made me look at like I was my own worst critic, but other people were not saying it.
Yeah.
So for somebody, another man who I respected, because I immediately respected him, to come in and tell me the hard things really was the challenge that I needed. And it really put, set a precedence in my life of how I want to challenge other men who are going through similar situations.
Yeah, man. So that first deployment then to Afghanistan, you did 8 deployments and they were all to Afghanistan.
But when you had that unit, a JSOC unit, you're short, like 3 to 4 months and then come back and you're home for 3 or 4 months and you're back out again.
Yeah. Yeah, still, that's a good run. That's a good run.
Well, I never like to compare it to the guy that was at 82nd Airborne, a 15-month deployment. Like seriously,
gosh, those guys that were there in I forget what unit it is. I wove it into the first novel actually. The guys that were over there in 2004 Iraq, and they thought they were coming home, and they had sent the guys home already to get ready and accept everybody coming back. The main body coming back. They were guys that they were at the airfield, I think. And they were loading pallets, getting ready to go. And they'd already been there for either 12 or 13 months, whatever it was. But then they got the word there that, no, you gotta stay another 4.
Yeah.
And they had guys come back then, like, I think some of them were from Alaska and they flew back to Iraq, and some of those guys didn't make it home after they thought they were home. They reunited with their families. Hey, we made it. Oh no, you're going back for another 4. They go back and then don't make it home. I mean, just
the Army would even send guys home and leave. Like,
I remember.
Go back and you get to go home for a week and come back.
It's wild. What changed over the time then, over those 8 deployments? Do you remember looking at kind of the geopolitical situation, or did you think of things in strategic terms, or did you think long term, or did you just think tactically? Here we are. This is my first time here. I'm here for 4 months. Here's my mission, and I'm going to execute. What were you thinking there? And what was the changes between that first one and that last one?
I lived out in town. So I lived out in, I lived in Kabul. I always had a place in Kabul, and then I lived in, Jabad and Jalalabad and Batakut, and I lived close to the Tarkan border. Wow. I lived across the border in Peshawar and Islamabad, and was up in the Northeast Frontier Province quite a bit.
Wow.
And so just over those years, not only seeing the geography change, when I remember first going to Kabul, like there were street vendors everywhere, and you still had 2003, 2004, like it was so much different. Then they start clearing the streets, and the military, started really controlling Kabul, and then you'd see not just the geography change and the structure of the city, infrastructure of the city change, but the people change, the way people dress, the way people, just carried themselves. Everything changed in Kabul over that period of time. And then our bases, right? Our bases went from, where Bagram was simply a giant fob to with HESCO barriers and Constantino wire to being like pretty much a city. Mm-hmm. And my son went there. It was like, oh my gosh, like there's volleyball tournaments and movie theaters and over the years. And Kabul is, I think, what changed most, but even places like, as you moved out from Kabul, things continue to change over the years. But at least my years there up to 2007, once you got once you got an hour outside of Kabul, it was Afghanistan.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful country. I remember the mountains, and we're flying in those helos, like looking to your right, looking to your left, and just seeing, the mountains and it being so beautiful, seeing the sunrise and the sunsets from those helicopters. And I think we might have spent some time at the same place, the Ariana. Maybe spent some time at the Ariana, at the bar there.
Yeah. But across the border, like in Pakistan, I mean, you had all three of the mountain ranges hit there, Himalaya Kush, Karakoram, and Himalaya Mountains all meet in one place. And that is the most beautiful place I've ever been in the world. Nanga Parbat, which is Killer Mountain. That's the second highest to K2. I mean, there's the Indus River, like so beautiful.
Yeah, and people in backpacking around Europe in the late '60s, early '70s, they would take a trip to Kabul to go see an exotic locale. They take a little break from seeing things in Europe, and it was quite common to go and go to Kabul during that time. And of course, things got a little rough later, but it is a beautiful country. How is the continuity? So when you first meet Aziz, what deployment are you on when you meet him, and are you meeting new people every time, or are you dropping back into the kind of the same networks that you were working the last time, or what was that like?
Yeah, that's what made my deployments a little bit unique, is that I didn't have all 8 of my trips to Afghanistan were not separate deployments, separate operations. It was the same one. So the continuity was just continuous, and it was just a continuation of the same operation. I was, even when I was back stateside, part of what was going on while I was gone. So the people that were relieving me and out rotating teams, I would rotate out. Started working side by side with a SEAL named Dave Lamone. I don't know if you know Dave, but he was ended up being rotating out with me, and so. So Dave and I, both became close to Aziz, but Aziz started off as an interpreter. He came back. He had fled the Taliban in exile because he started teaching English when he was 8. By 14, he was teaching his whole neighborhood. So he's teaching he learned English on his own when he was 8, and he started teaching at 14. And he was teaching like 800 people in Kabul, and got caught by the Taliban. And then he fled in exile. He got in a physical altercation with the Taliban. Fled, went to Abu Dhabi or Dubai. He was in Dubai. And then when 9/11 happened and U.S. military came, his dad said, "You need to come back. Here's your opportunity." And he said, "I want to go back and fight alongside the U.S. military because I want to free Afghanistan. I want to have my future daughters to be able to be not sexually enslaved and be able to be educated." And so he came back and went straight to the 3rd Special Forces Group, became an interpreter there. Then went on the Afghan anti-terrorism task force, and then came over from there. He worked at the Presidential Palace with that, and then came over from there and was picked up on this JSOC task force. And so when he came to us, he was initially just my interpreter, and then we had a program to vet these guys and give them some special skills and training to be able to be embedded with us. And so he was polygraphed, heavily vetted, then trained, and then he ultimately became a senior cultural advisor and an embedded team member, allowed to go out with the AFOs in a singleton capacity. And so that's where he became, my primary teammate. And so all 8 of my deployments, anytime I worked singleton, it was me and Aziz, and we go out for weeks at a time, just the 2 of us, and cross border or in JBAD or all over, and just building all the clandestine infrastructure that AFOs do to be able to do these unconventional type putting assaulters on target. And there's a lot that goes behind. I know but for your listeners, there's a lot that goes behind when you look at a tier 1 asset going on target to capture, kill a bad guy. They don't get on target by accident. And there's a lot of that goes behind putting them on target. There's a lot of contingencies in place. There's a lot of local national assets that are in place. And so the AFOs go in advance and set all that up. And so Aziz and I would be in advance setting all that up for the unit. And he was just brilliant. He was brave, probably one of the most courageous people I've ever seen. And he was always putting, like, if we were going, I had the military experience, but if we were going around a corner or going to a house or going into a cave or something like that, he would go first because I was his responsibility. And he was always very serious about that. And he saved my life 3 times specifically. And then but I would say he saved my life every day. Like, don't walk there, don't eat that, don't talk to that person. Like, if you speak right now, like, shut up. If you speak right now, we're gonna die.
Wow.
Like, he was always making sure that I was safe. And then whenever I was done with operation, I didn't go back to Bagram, and he went home. I usually stayed with him, and his wife Hatra and I, over the years. I mean, we have this, now that she's back in Texas, we have this incredible relationship, but it started way back in 2004. That in this uncommon relationship for American to be able to have access to Afghan wife. And I was there when Mashoud, his oldest son, was born, and Mashoud. So we developed a very, very special, and I'd say uncommon relationship between U.S. personnel and an interpreter.
Yeah. What was that first time that stands out in your mind where you're like, wow, this guy just saved my life right here?
It was we were supplying these safe houses. And this is the reason I remember specifically, because I was like, this guy's not only looking out for me, but he's like extremely street smart, and has the ability to keep me safe, because I made a mistake today, and I'm probably gonna make more, and he's the one that's gonna keep me alive. We were stocking these safe houses, so we'd have safe houses, and we put all local national assets in it, for the guys, blood for the clothes, money, water, food, vehicles with right plates and permits and all the stuff that needs to be in as a safe house. But we also have hard rums with local national weapons, so AK-47s and extra ammo and PKMs and RPGs and grenades and all the stuff that would be local national stuff. And so we usually buy that stuff from off the street from bad guys. And so I was going to buy a couple of crates of AK-47s, a PKM, and a lot of ammunition. And the guy that previously had did these buys was a team guy, and I don't want to say his name because I don't embarrass him, but he was actually kind of a knucklehead, and was doing some things that created a scenario that these guys, that Aziz is like, hey, I think they think this could be the same guy, and because of the way he handled it, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to roll him up and rob him and kill him, and they thought that's who I was going to be, so they thought it was the same guy, because we were doing a handoff. And they didn't want to let him know I was gonna be a new guy. I was gonna show up and be the new guy. And so Aziz is like, was just really keen on and it was like, we need to plan ahead. I'll go with you, and we're gonna bring two other guys. So we brought this guy Dano and Bank with us. And as we go into this compound, it was like we met in this mud compound. Had these Afghan just walls compound. We pulled in, they had like a culvert over a ditch. We pulled into this compound, closed the gate behind us, and the guy's waiting in there, and he had like an SUV, and me and Dan are looking at the guns and making sure everything was there. And Bank and Aziz are looking over the wall, looking at that entryway that we came in. And while we were looking at the guns, I heard Aziz start screaming, and he's screaming at someone. And I heard Bank screaming at someone, and they're yelling at someone. I couldn't make out what was happening, but the guy right away says, "Hey, don't hurt them. They're my friends." And I'm like, "How do you know who they are?" Because they're on the other side of a wall. Like, so he had some people there to come meet him. And so Dan grabs the guy, sticks a pistol in his ribs, and holds the guy. And I go over with Aziz and Bank, and the guys couldn't get out of the car. There was 4 guys in the car. They all 4 had AK-47s and looked like typical Taliban. And they couldn't get out of the car because Aziz and Bank had him pinned down. So we took the guys out of the car, zip tied them, laid them in a ditch, and took their weapons and moved they had a little Corolla. So we moved the Corolla out of the way so we could actually get out, and threw their keys in the field and left them there, because we didn't know who these guys belonged to, and didn't want to create something by killing them or anything, which, wouldn't just murdered them anyway. But we and then we took the guy with us. And Aziz is like, take him with us, and we're gonna drop him off and go tell his uncle, who we were doing the deals through, who was a tribal leader. And so that's what we did. We drove him in the next town, dropped him off. The whole time he's yelling like, "Don't kill me!" And Bank's like panicking, and he's not panicking because he was like freaking. He's like, "Tell him to shut up!" And I don't know what he's saying. He's like, he's asking us not to kill him. And so, anyways, we ended up kicking the guy out of the car and going to his uncle and saying, "Hey, we were trying to do business with you, and your nephew tried to rob us," and then we never seen or heard from the guy again. But it was that incident that I was like, this guy's he's looking out for me. Yeah. And he's super street smart. And, I could have just walked into something and I would have been dead today. But he was thinking ahead. And so Yeah, that to me was like, man, he's Aziz is the guy, and everybody that's ever worked with him, same thing.
Wow. What was the second time? Was it that same deployment or a different deployment?
You know, the second time was I want to mention, you know, probably not directly saving me, but I want to mention this because he just got an award from Congress, recognized by Congress, based off eyewitness statements. There was four team guys who were doing this incredible. I mean, these guys are super solid. So saying that Aziz rescued them is not a hit on them. These guys were like super solid, but they were two snipers and two other team guys that were with them, and they were in this. I don't want to say the platform they were on, but they were in this platform, got stuck in this village, and the village was like heavily like occupied Taliban village. So 4 guys stuck there. Wow. A traditional QRF would have lit off like a major like fight that U.S. personnel would have died. The whole operation would have been compromised. And so they're asking us if there was a clandestine extraction method that we could pull off. And we were like, we didn't have some of our assets in place, and it would have been very difficult. And Aziz, like, he's an interpreter, right? He's an interpreter, but then you got these guys that have all this experience. Aziz steps up and is like, here's what we're going to do. And we're going to get this vehicle, and this specifics I won't say, we're going to get this particular vehicle, and we're going to drive all night, and we're going to drive there, and we're going to go get these guys. And he's like, these are my brothers. I'm like, you don't even know them. He's like, they're my brothers. And, wow. And so, I mean, for an Afghan, like, to put their life at risk to go get 4 team guys that I never met before. And like, it was a crazy deal. And driving to that village, and we drove all night, and we got in that village, and you know, it was because of him we got those guys out, and we got all 4 of the team guys out, all their equipment, and they had some critical equipment with them. We were able to extract the equipment, and you know, and no one got hurt, and there was and the operation wasn't compromised because of him.
Wow.
And just like he was just Johnny on the spot all the time, and was 100% in, and you know, proved his loyalty to America. But, you know, I don't think it was about America so much as it was about freedom, like the cause of freedom. And I was telling someone today, like, this guy, like, he really opened my eyes, because this guy understood freedom and democracy and was willing to die for it. And he never even seen it before. Wow. You know? And I think that's something every American can learn from. Like, you know, he knew, like, I don't want my daughters to grow up like this. I don't want my country to be this way. You know, it doesn't have to be this way. And we have the opportunity right now to fight for it. And he was willing to do it. It always inspired me. It was always me and the guys would always be talking about it. Man, Aziz is like, he's American. He never been to America.
Yeah,
you know?
That's amazing. Yeah, it's that appreciation, you know, and that investment. You know, it's when you invest in something, then you have ownership rather than just taking. I think there's too many people today that just are just taking. They're the beneficiaries of the sacrifices of previous generations, and they don't appreciate what was sacrificed for those freedoms, which causes them to act a certain way, have certain behaviors that show that they're not thankful, grateful, appreciative of those options and opportunities and freedoms for which so many sacrifice. But then you have someone here, you have Aziz, who maybe aspiring to someday experience that freedom firsthand, fighting for it on his home turf with you, side by side with Americans. What was the third one that stood out to you?
The third one was, you know, when we were I'm so late. Okay, yeah. But the third one, I was across border, and I'll just say cross border in a neighboring country, and I, because of our operation got compromised, when those guys were rolled up and killed, those 12 guys were rolled up and 10 of them were Afghans and killed. We had a compromise because one of the guys that was vetted, polygraph trained by OGA, turned Taliban and turned us over. And not only that, he had orchestrated a V-bid to be drove into our home, my home where I lived. Luckily, none of our team members were there. One of our guards were there. We're pretty sure he was killed. We don't know for sure, but pretty sure still to this day he was killed. But a V-bid was driven to our home. They went after Aziz specifically, and I ended up being rolled up by a foreign intelligence agency for a day. And you know, he orchestrated an effort to make sure that I was safe and be able to get out of the area that I was in. And he put his life at risk to be able to do that. And meanwhile, you know, him and his family was at risk because he was part of the compromise. And but he still felt that overwhelming responsibility to protect me.
Wow, jeez. What were you guys doing that you weren't there? Was there something that happened that like you should have been in that house and you happened to not be there that day, or was it?
The house was in Kabul, and I was across border, and the other guys were I don't know where at, but they were somewhere else in Afghanistan. And so when they caught the guy, by the way, the command actually caught the guy. Like everything shut down, and everybody went after him. And so we got him. And when they got him, he had tablets with like he had been having for months, like where each person slept, where our safes were, our routes and times. Even though we were deviating routes and times, he had routes and times. So he had a full like journal on all of us. And so when they caught him, he had all that on him. And so this guy, his name's Bashir. And I have a picture of that little rat bastard right over there. But he gets called by the command, gets put in Bagram jail. Then he goes out and I
that's
think
not a good place to be. I've been in there.
Yeah.
on the right side of the bars.
The right side of the bars.
Yeah, it's not a good spot.
So he's in jail, and then he gets released to Saudi Arabia, and I think in 2011, and then he gets freed and comes back to Afghanistan and joins the Taliban. And so our government released him under the Obama administration during this big release. So he gets released and he goes back, and so he works his way up to be a leader in the Taliban. And now, at the time of the evacuation, the withdrawal, he gets sent over to Kabul, and he starts hunting down people from our operation. And so I learned about this in April. And this is like what really sparked my interest in the evacuation, because Aziz calls me and says, "Hey, Bashir's looking for me. He killed. He ends up catching and killing one of the guys that worked with us and cut his head off in front of his son." And so Aziz is like, I need to start moving. So it's starting like I think around June, Aziz started moving houses regularly, being on the run. And I started. We had Aziz's SIV in process for 6 years, which is only supposed to be a 9-month process. And talking about a guy that did 15 years special operations, vetted, polygraphed, worked at the premier like special operations command. Like this guy for 6 years, his visa didn't go through. And so I'm like calling everybody. I know people in Congress and Senate, like, "Hey, this is my friend. This is what he did." I'm like violating things that I probably shouldn't be saying, like in letters, like, because I'm like, I don't care if I get in trouble, because you guys need to do the right thing and get him out. And nothing was happening. They were not going to get him out. And so as we got closer to it, I'm watching, President Biden make the announcements on the withdrawal and starts giving specific dates. Me and every other veteran knew that it was going to be catastrophic. And for me personally, I'm like, I'm going to have to do something for my friend. I'm going to have to go get my friend.
Yeah.
And that's what we made a decision to, I started calling people. We had several different types of operations, started going to the AFO background. I called the Daily Wire, which is Tucker Carlson's show. And as a reporter there named Richard McGinnis, who was undercover with Antifa and during all the riots and stuff like that.
Wow.
And does a lot of the undercover stuff with a lot of the stuff you've seen on Tucker Carlson. The footage was from Richard McGinnis. He was actually there when during the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting.
Yeah.
He put pressure on that guy's head he was testified during that case. And so he's like pretty, down to do crazy stuff, reporter. And I've known him because I did a lot of interviews with him. I said, "Hey, we're going to go into Afghanistan, and I'm going to take you in and get the footage of the withdrawal. I'll be your like consultant, and then we're going to get Aziz as local consultant, and we'll like really get you a good story. All I need you to do is when we leave, we need to go back, take Aziz's family back to Dubai to interview them there." And so that was the plan. And things and actually the Daily Caller had approved to do that operation. They were totally in. They knew what we were doing. We weren't hiding anything from them. And then but things just sped up too quickly, and we couldn't pull it off in time. And so we just said, we're just gonna have to go get him. And so I started calling guys from the special operations community, a few team guys, some SF guys, some guys from the CIA's paramilitary unit, ground branch that I knew really well, who had the experience to do these kind of operations. So I had some really good network of veterans people from the veteran community had the experience and willingness to go help. One of them, Tim Kennedy, a lot of people kind of gave us a hard time because Tim Kennedy was involved. What people don't know about Tim is that he was ASO level 3, scout sniper, sniper in Army. Like he has tons of combat experience, and and I've known him for like 14 years. And I also needed someone with a platform that could help. That's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, so these are, these are considerations. So we put together, and Tim's heart was just like, he was offering money for other people. And for me, it was like, there's no money. Like, this is just us just going to help. And so he volunteered to do it. So we put this team together, and as we're putting it together, one of the team members pointed out something pretty important. Hey, there's these 30, it's great that we could go get Aziz, his wife and 6 kids, but there's these 3,500 orphans. What about them? And I kind of think it kind of made us pushed us to pause for a second and say, look around in the room, like the guys that we had, like tremendous amount of experience, a lot of willingness to, everybody was 100% on board. Let's get as many Americans, interpreters, their families, women, children, Christians that be persecuted. Let's get as many people as we can. And so I think that was like another burden that God put in our hearts, to each of our hearts to do that. I think everybody in the group was people of faith and really felt God burdened our hearts. In fact, we called it Task Force 6-8 from Isaiah 6-8. Who will go for us? Here am I, send me. And so that's where we called it Task Force 6-8 out of that. Wow. And that was the initial Save Our Allies effort that we launched out of both Mighty Oaks Foundation and Sarah Verardo's Independence Fund. And so as we started, made the decision to help more people, what I really, and it's one of the things that I think most important things in the book for me is that I just witnessed like what I believe is a miracle. Because in a 3-day period, like the most incredible thing happened, a series of events happened that if one of them would have not worked, the whole thing would have failed. The first was that Sarah Verardo was able to call the Joint Chiefs and get permission for our NGO to go onto the HKI airport to do civilian evacuations, which from being in the middle, that's impossible. To someone say, yeah, we're gonna let some DOD's gonna let civilians come on the airport and do evacuations. We asked, and they said yes. And not only that, they said they would vet our manifest and give us approval for our manifest, which is a big deal because I think a lot of people were concerned, me included, that we bring the wrong type of people out of Afghanistan. Yeah. Which I don't have the ability to bring people to America because I'm not the State Department. I can bring people to a third party country, and the State Department could do their role. Right. So that was the first thing, which I think if that would have not happened, it would have been very difficult. Yeah. The second was like, now you got these people that don't have visas. Where do you bring them to? Like, you can't just bring people without visas to another country. That's human trafficking. So we had two connections in our group with the royal family in UAE, and Joe Roberts and one of the other guys, I can't say his name, but they both called and we set up a conference call. And after an hour-long conference call, the UAE royal family said, we'll roll out the red carpet for you. And we're going to give you a humanitarian center, doctors, like whatever you need, you bring them here. We're going to take care of them. And then they said, by the way, we're also going to give you a C-17 plane. And if you fill that one up, we're going to give you another one. Wow. And so we had access to the airport. We had a place to bring people to, and we had the means to do it. We knew we need more planes, and the next day, Glenn Beck called. If you know Glenn Beck, the radio show host, most powerful thing he has is a microphone, and so many people want to do something, and he did himself. He got him behind that microphone, and he asked for help, and his audience, the Blaze audience, and his foundation, Mercury One, just responded incredibly. And in a few days, he raised $21 million. Wow. Overall, I think he raised $46 million, but he called me at the $21 million mark and said, I got all this money. I thought I raised a few thousand. Like, what do I do with it? And I said, I need you to pay for planes. And so all these people came together, and this amazing thing was orchestrated in a period of 3 days. That to me is a divine miracle. And, we get a lot of credit for what we've done, but to be honest with you, like we had a lot of gray hair in our teams. we were all out, hadn't done it in a long time. And so we were not the A team to do it, but I believe God orchestrated the perfect group of people who had the willingness to go. And we went to Abu Dhabi, set up operations. Sarah Verardo set up a team in Washington, D.C. to take applications. We had so many people requesting help, and we were orchestrating building target packages to rescue people. We had a ground team that went outside the wire from the HKI airport to get people. And it was a very coordinated effort to do something like that. And in that non-permissive environment of the Taliban, especially because the White House gave the NEO operation, the non-combatant evacuation operation, from the DOD to the State Department, which restricted the DOD to one location. And the Taliban took that outer perimeter. So now we had to deal with that. And the people trying to come in had to deal with that. So it was a very complex environment, but and we didn't know how much time we had. We just knew we had to work fast. And I mean, no one stopped to sleep. If you stop for 5 minutes, you're like, someone's gonna die because I'm stopping for 5 minutes to sleep. Sea Spray, one of our teammates goes by Sea Spray. He lost 37 pounds in 10 days moving people. I mean, he just didn't stop. And so it was incredible to be amongst these guys and watching the work they did. Tim Kennedy, Sea Spray, Sean G was our ground team out of the HKI airport, going outside the wire and getting people. We had a Air Force JSOC unit that actually was able to grab Aziz the first day, and we coordinated it and get him in. So we got Aziz, his family, and through a 10-day period, we had no idea how many people we got out. But when that Abbey Gate blew up and 13 of our service members died, the military had to weld the gate shut and begin their evacuation of the airport. And we had tallied up, and we had got 12,000 people out of that point. And
incredible.
And we had no idea. And then we decided at that point, as the military is leaving, we're like, they're leaving, but we don't have to leave. And this could get, it gets like really political, but the White House was saying there was 100 Americans still there. And it's not a political debate to me, like being on the ground, and there was thousands of Americans still there, well over 1,000 Americans still there. And so, and the truth is, it doesn't matter if there was 100 or 1,000, right? Yeah. You don't leave an American behind. Even Joe Berdahl, like idiot traitor, like we lost people trying to go get him. Like, the mentality is you scorch the earth around that person to go get an American. That's a promise that we should have to the American people. And I just couldn't just pack up and go home and say it's over. And no one else on our team wanted to. And so we stayed. And I can tell you, like I say, we, the Save Our Allies effort, me personally, have gotten a lot of credit for this. But the truth is, there were so many amazing people, mainly Americans and nonprofits, that chose to stay. Task Force Orgo and Mercury One and all these. I could go down a list of Task Force Pineapple and so many amazing people that continued to work. And over a period of about 2 more months, collectively, we got about another 5,000 people out. So another 17,000 people total. And when that was over, the aircraft was over, we made this decision that we had to find another way to still help, because people were still trying to get across borders. In Uzbekistan, we had looked at this one operation in Uzbekistan, but what had happened was all the Afghan people that were trying to survive moved to this place called the Panjshir Valley. And Ahmad Massoud's son is now the resistance leader. And anybody knows the history of Afghanistan and the 9/11, about the Northern Alliance leader, Ahmad Massoud. His son now is the leader of resistance. And all these people are trying to resist the Taliban, and they're in the Panjshir Valley. And many of the civilians, they're trying to push them out across the border into Tajikistan. The problem was geographically, and anybody's familiar with that area, you got 25,000-foot mountain peaks. And it would take a week to get through there. And then you maybe get a family through there, and now you have 1,000-foot cliff. Or the Panjshir River, which is the border, which is ice melt water, like below freezing, but just slushy moving through and many parts are like Category 5 rapids. And then on top of all that geographical difficulties, you have the Taliban checkpoints everywhere on that border and to that border. And then the Chinese military is securing that border. The Russian military is there, and the Tajikistan border guard's there. So there's no way really to cross without intel from the other side. And that's, as a Force Recon Marine, CORNS teams, you go out and do route recons and fording reps for crossing rivers and building routes. And that's kind of my background. And so I said, let's put a small 2-man team together and go into Tajikistan and build some routes out for these people. And that's one thing we could still do. And so we made a decision to do that. And there was a Marine named Staff Sergeant Dennis Price, who had just got off active duty, was in the reserves. He was at JSOC previously. So he had a lot of experience, scout sniper, several time Force Recon Team Leader of the Year. So just solid dude. Mm-hmm. And he was the guy that we said be a great partner for me to go do this. But the problem was he was still in the reserves, and I knew his CO, Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Waller, and I just asked, "Hey, sir, can we get Dennis Price, Staff Sergeant Price, to come on this humanitarian operation with me in Tajikistan?" He's like, "We'll put it in writing," and so we did, and the Marine Corps approved it. And he came, and which is, I don't think they meant to, or knew exactly what he was doing, but they approved it, and he flies into Tajikistan with me, and 12 hours through those mountains, and we spent 10 days on that border doing 90 miles of border reconnaissance, and every night, we'd find a route, plot a route, identify, where Chinese, Russians, and Taliban were, and we'd swim across into Afghanistan and river, and we'd did both sides, did the forwarding rep, and provided all that information back to our government intelligence agencies. Jeez. To because our government intelligence agencies did want that information because we had good people in those organizations that didn't agree with what was happening. We provided it to other NGOs that were doing evacuations and to the people on the ground, so the commandos there could safely get them out with instructions of where to cross, how to cross, and all the information that you would put in a forward rep or a route rep. And we provided a tremendous amount of information. I mean, it was crazy on the border, like literally, like Taliban was everywhere, and the Chinese military was a pretty crazy operation to write a lot about in the book. And at the time, it seemed like it made sense looking back to it now. But that water was ice cold, but at the time, going into that, it just felt like we had to do it. Like my wife, we were going to the airport. My wife's like, "Okay, I got Kaya, you got Aziz, but why are you going to do this?" Like she's like, "Do you have something to prove?" Like, right. And I'm like, I mean, I think everybody should ask this. Like, what if it was, and that's what I told my wife, what if it was my daughter? Like, what if it was like our daughter that would be sexually enslaved the rest of her life, or our sons that would be pushed into madrasas to become Taliban, terrorists the rest of their life? Like, what if it was us? Wouldn't we be praying that someone somewhere in the world would come and help? And I just felt like God had burdened my heart to do it. These impossible doors were open. I mean, to go do something like that, to get into Tajikistan during a war on the border. I mean, we had to get GBAL permits to get on the border. All these impossible things kept happening. I'm like, God's opening these doors to go. We have to, and I'm glad we did, because we were able to help a lot of people, and it's a pretty incredible thing to be part of, and some amazing people stepped up to make it happen. And one of the things you said earlier, it was really encouraging to hear you say that you read the book, and it's a book of hope. Mm-hmm. It really is, because at times, regardless of what political side you sit on and what news station you watch, it can feel pretty hopeless in our country right now. Yeah. But the truth is, when the governments of the world in 2021 did not do the right thing, including our own, it was good people stood up and did the right thing, and mainly Americans, mainly from America, that stood up and said, "This is not okay. This is not right. I'm going to put my money, put my safety, put my resources, put my influence on the line to do the right thing for their fellow human." Yeah. And people came from all over. Like, there's a lot of people that follow me on social media that don't like some of my conservative opinions, and they follow me they don't like me, and they were like, "Hey, I don't like you." They write me like, "Hey, I don't like you." And I follow you because I don't like you, but what you're doing is awesome. Where can we donate? Oh, wow. And I was like, that's the coolest thing. And we had this Jewish organization that was like, "Hey, we want to pay for 2 planes." And one was 800,000 and one was 700,000. Wow. So it was like a $1.5 million donation. And they're out of Israel, and they go to make this donation, and they come back and they say, "Hey, we can't make the donation because Mighty Oaks Foundation," which is where the money was going to, "is a Christian organization. We're Jewish, so we can't make the donation." And I'm like, "Okay, but you do realize we're rescuing Muslims, right?" We kind of laughed and paused for a second, and they made the donation. And so people came together from different backgrounds and beliefs and political values, and it did the right thing. And there's hope in that. And it was really encouraging. It was encouraging to me. This is an American. Yeah, no, it's an incredible story. And when you were in Kabul at the airport, did you have to deal with the Taliban and that outer ring of security? Did you have to have like face-to-face interactions through an interpreter? Was the military handling that, or what was your interaction with the Taliban during that evacuation? So at that part, at the HKIA, I did personally. It would have been Sean G, C Spray, Tim Kennedy. But your group did. Your group had to. Group did, yeah. They had Tim had a face off. Had a face off with some Taliban guys. Yeah. And it was like, who wants some today? And he was armed at that time. And I think for the most part, the Taliban, when they seen who you were, like, and they picked up like, okay, these guys are somebody. They backed down because they wanted us to leave, and they knew we had a date, right? They know, like, the White House gave them a date, like August 31st, we're leaving. Yeah. Hey, can we get to September? Nope. August 31st, we're leaving. So they knew that we were leaving, so they didn't push it with any of us. And I don't know of any scenario of soft guys leaving the wire or our 3 guys, because I think at the airport it was only our 3 guys that left the wire. I think outside of the airport, I mean, I could be wrong, and people get all upset if I'm wrong, but I think the only people that actually went outside the wire and went into Afghanistan to do evacuations would have been Sean G, C Spray, Tim Kennedy, myself, and Dennis. Besides that, everybody worked from inside the airport or from back in the States and did amazing efforts. But so I think the only people that would have got into that would have been, Tim, Sean, or C Spray. And I mean, one time Sean G said right in front of him, two people were shot right in the head, and the Taliban just looked right at him and let him walk by. And they were killing people right in front of our U.S. military all the time. The way that operation really set up, I think it's important for people to understand. I break this down a lot in the book. Is when you have civilians in a hostile area or combat environment, there's what's called a NEO operation, a non-combatant evacuation operation. And that's a DoD function. And there's a reason that our State Department does diplomacy and our military uses strength, because it's two separate efforts. It's very important those efforts be separated. In this situation, the White House took the DoD's NEO operation away from them and gave it to the State Department. And it's like if we both worked on an airplane and the baggage handler jumps in the pilot seat, right? We both work at the airline, but one person is going to crash the plane. And that's what happened with
What was the rationale? Did anyone ever tell you or speculate about the rationale behind doing that?
I was told that the White House believed that the military had too much of a personal attachment to the relationship with the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police and their allies there. That's what I was told. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's why. And the State Department was, the ones negotiating with the Taliban, not the Afghan government, by the way, but the actual Taliban, which has been, one of the most perplexing questions to me that's never been answered. Is we have been there 20 years. We stood up a government, the Afghan government. We had this international effort with every, NATO country in the world participating in keeping the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police capable in a support and advisory capacity since 2018 to push the Taliban into those mountains and keep the world a safer place. But the White House didn't talk to the NATO. They didn't talk to Britain and Germany and everybody else that was participating. They didn't talk to the Afghan government that we put in place. The only people the White House negotiated with was the Taliban through the State Department. And so, and I don't know why that would have took place that way. No one could explain it. No one will even ask the question or bring accountability to that question. But it's a very important question. Like, why did we negotiate with the enemy of 20 years and not with that government that we spent 20 years putting in place, or our international allied partners from around the world?
Yeah, it shouldn't be lost on anyone that we spent 20 years giving the Taliban, back to the Taliban, essentially giving that country of Afghanistan back to the Taliban. It's an
insane scenario. So this NEO operation was given to the State Department, and they treated the airport like an embassy. And so if you can imagine embassy, right, the military is at an embassy, and they're led by the State Department, and same was happening in this airport. And they were control the perimeter of the airport, but they could not go outside to get Americans. They could not go outside to get allies. If they saw someone being harmed or in harm's way or being killed in front of them, they could not leave that airport. They were treated just like embassy guards. Now, meanwhile, the Brits and other people were flying in helicopters, going out getting people. Our troops had to watch our American civilians try to get in that airport and had no control over it. Now, when that happened, the State Department allowed the Taliban to make the outer perimeter. And anybody that knows anything about military strategy, whoever controls the outer perimeter of a ground space controls that ground space, because they control who gets in and who gets out. And so the Taliban had full control of who got in, who got out of the airport. And so that's why we know of Americans with blue passports getting their passports taken from them, getting beaten, getting turned around. And that's why Americans had stopped going to the airport. And then you had the White House reporting saying, hey, well, if they want to evacuate, they just need to go to the airport. We have Americans there, but they're choosing not to come. No, they're choosing not to go through a Taliban checkpoint because they just saw someone get murdered in front of them. They just saw, and this is a true, not an example, not a crazy example, but a real example. They just saw someone get their arms cut off and get their ID card melted to their chest, tied to the back of a car, and drugged through the street while they carried the guy's son away. Like, if I got a blue passport, I'm probably not going to that checkpoint and showing my blue passport and saying, hey, I'm American, let me through. And so this is the scenario, the environment on the ground. And it was and then on top of that, it was just sheer chaos to get to that airport gate. Tens of thousands of people trying to flood that gate, people getting trampled and dying of the elements of heat exhaustion, people so desperate that they were taking their babies, kissing their babies goodbye, putting them on the top to be crowd surfed. And then they get to the wall and they're throwing them as hard and high as they can to get over that wall. and not realizing it's concertina on the wire on the other side. Joe Roberts, one of our guys on our team, counted 6 babies that bled out in that concertina wire. Because when some concertina wires crimped together, that's it. And it's 6 feet high and 20 feet deep, and you got babies getting thrown into it. I mean, the level of desperation there, it was just crazy to think of people trying to get to the airport, into that airport, and why they wouldn't have wanted to go there. I would have, if I was there with my family. I mean, and hats off to Aziz. That's Aziz. We got Aziz through and moved him, and I pushed him to move through after his eighth attempt. I'm like, wow. You got to go, brother. But if it was me there, looking back now, I probably would have went for a border.
Yeah.
Person.
Right. Oh, like Chris Ryan running to Syria in the first Gulf War, SAS, man, crazy. Were you guys on the airfield when Abbey Gate happened?
Yeah. Tim had just been at the Abbey Gate, and I had thought he was still there when it went off. And so we had a little moment of radio silence, and we were super concerned he was there. And thankfully he wasn't, but he saw the plume, and he had just left that gate and saw the plume, and obviously felt and heard the concussion.
God. What did you think about when you found out that that's where the evacuation was going to take place from Kabul, and not like holding Bagram, till we could get everybody, or as many people as we could, out? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the most strategic place on the globe, in my opinion, the most strategic place on the globe today is Bagram Air Force Base. It sits strategically between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. And so the fact that, giving that up as a strategic location in the world is the issue. And the fact that we gave it up before we had evacuated our civilians is an even bigger issue. I mean, you don't evacuate the military and our military strongholds before you evacuate civilians and personnel or equipment. And that's what we did. And so there was a moment, and I don't want to say this now because it was redacted in my book, but there's a moment that we could have retaken it, and for some reason the Pentagon redacted the details of that in my book, but that we could have had a secondary evacuation route, and you got all of our equipment there, set to be $80 billion in equipment. I mean, if you'd lost a pair of MBGs, what would happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday with Lieutenant Colonel Paul Yingling back in, let's say, 2005-ish, maybe around that time frame. He said a private that loses a rifle gets in more trouble than a general who loses a war.
Yeah,
that still holds true today. No accountability for those guys.
All those equipment, I think here's a very important thing that everybody needs to know. And I mean, I think every American needs to know this. I believe that we were lied to for a long time by the mainstream media and by the White House, and that we were in this 20-year war. And by the way, this is both administrations. I think President Trump should not have did this, and President Biden. So this isn't just a hit on President Biden. We were told that we were in this 20-year war. It was an endless war, and America's sons and daughters were dying, and we had to pull out. We have to get out as fast as possible. That is a complete lie to the American people, and has misled us to believe that maybe that we should have did this withdrawal, but it was botched. It could have been done better. We should not have left. And the reason why from a national security perspective and a global security perspective, it made sense to keep that strategic location at Bagram Air Force Base. In 2018, the U.S. military stopped being involved in a conventional sense, fighting the Taliban, and we moved to a support and advisory role. And in moving in that support and advisory role, at times we had only 2,500 troops there, and at the time of withdrawal, 4,000 troops there. We were participating in this international effort where all these countries are coming together, supporting and advising the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police to keep the Taliban at bay in those mountains and make the world a safer place. And historically, we have not left wars this way. If you look at Japan, since World War II, we still have 80,000 troops there. In South Korea, right we have that, in the 38th parallel, we still have 35,000 troops there, and it keeps the North Koreans from coming across and disrupting, that Eurasia, the Asian Pacific area there. And then in Germany, we still have about 40,000 troops in Germany since World War II. So these, historically, we have a precedence of keeping a contingency in place for strategic positioning and ground that we kept, and keeping that eye on the world. And And man, it worked. The international community was participating. And if we have all these thousands and tens of thousands of troops in other places, then why was it so important and such a rush to move 2,500 troops out? If we didn't want to be there, why didn't we give it to the international community? Why would we give that base to the Taliban? A lot of motives in my mind of why. I mean, now, but I could say, my motives are just opinions. But I would say that now that strategic location is owned by the enemies of the United States and enemies of the world. And China has a presence there. Iran has influence there now. Pakistan ISI has our equipment and has a presence there. The Taliban does not run Afghanistan. All these major world players that I just mentioned control Afghanistan, and Taliban's allowed to be there by them.
Man, do you think lithium is a big part of that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not even funny at all. But I forget what show I was on, and I was saying that China wants the United States military out of Afghanistan because of the lithium mineralites in the Hindu Kush Mountains. And everybody was like, that's conspiracy theory. August 31st, we left. 2 days later in September, the Taliban announces they can give the mineral rights for the Hindu Kush Mountains for all the lithium there to China. Now these global resources that could have been ours belongs to China. Economically and on a global stage, it weakens America. And in addition, you have oil, right? Iran has sanctioned oil that they can't sell anywhere in the world, and China wants that oil. The only thing that kept Iran from giving that oil to China was the United States military in Afghanistan. And now there's a void there, and we know that oil is being moved over to China, that sanctioned oil. So many things, strategically, Pakistan ISI, they want it Bagram Air Force Base. Since day one, that's their involvement in Afghanistan, and they built up the Taliban army. You've been in these rooms before where there's the flat screens, TVs all over, and got the predators and watching from the sky what's happening. I can only imagine as this withdrawals happen, watching the Taliban come over in a force of 75,000 from the mountains of Pakistan in Afghanistan, knowing what was going to happen, and our military not being able to act and stop them. Wow. And one of the most grotesque things I think I ever heard said is the accusation, and it came from the president, unfortunately, with the accusation that we can't keep helping people that won't fight for themselves, and pointing to the Afghan people. 60,000 Afghans, like Aziz, died fighting for that country to have a free Afghanistan. The ratio of that, by population, it's probably like our Civil War, right? 60,000 Afghans, including hundreds of thousands of civilians, died fighting for their country to have a free Afghanistan and to fight terrorism. And they did so because we asked them to. And we didn't watch what we watched when they handed over rifles. We're not them quitting. It was us quitting on them, because you have to put yourself in their shoes. They had air superiority by us. They had all the support by us, by the entire international community, by the entire world. And we took it away from them overnight. And they went away as a soldier on deployment somewhere like we get to be, and go back home. That's where they live. Like if they stay and fight, willing to and fight to the death, which most of them will be willing to do, their wives and kids are down the street. Yeah. And they're not just going to be killed. They're going to have to watch their wives and daughters be raped in front of them, and their sons be drug off before they're killed. So I don't believe these guys gave up and didn't want to fight anymore. I believe we gave up on them, and they were stuck with what they were stuck with, and many of them are still there, and it is a complete tragedy. And one of my motivations behind this book is not to take political shots at the White House, but to just tell the truth. And I tried to really put it that way. Like the truth needs to be told so that we don't do it again. And it's a national security issue. How will any country ever? Wars are won by our relationship with local nationals. How would anybody ever trust us again, knowing this is how we treat our allies? Yeah. And it's a national security issue, in my opinion, and the world needs to know about it.
Yeah. And when you were talking to, Aziz, were you talking to him on text in April when the announcement came that, hey, we're going to be out of here by September 11th, I think was the first thing they said. Might be wrong about that. But anyway, we're going to be out of there over the next few months.
Right.
Were you talking to him on text? And then you start watching province by province fall. And then I think, was it July where we had some of the units that maybe we worked with over there, some of the special operations, the Afghans, where there was a massacre in a village where I forget exactly what happened. But were you tracking that as well? I think it was in July.
And that was a really. I'm glad you bring that up because that was a significant factor because you had 20. I think it was 25 special commandos that we trained. These are our guys, like and the best of the best in Afghanistan, and they were definitely war fighters. And man, they get caught by the Taliban, and the Taliban brings them out in the streets on camera and executes them on the street, like literally executes them on the street. The fact that no one responded to that and it wasn't even called out as an atrocity gave them the green light to do whatever they wanted.
It barely made a blip in the news. Like no one barely even talked about it.
Yeah. And it was like, man, like at that point they knew like, hey, we have free reign. We could do what we want. I mean, if you're going to take guys that were shoulder to shoulder with us last week and we allowed them to be executed in the streets, like, and then now we're saying this and the next day in the news, they're saying, this is the new Taliban. No, this isn't the new Taliban. This is the same old, Daesh thugs that we were exterminating the world of over the last 20 years. And now we just gave them a country and we just gave them 20 million female sex slaves to do what they want to with. And, where are the people standing up for these little girls' rights? And as they're before they even take Kabul, they're going through and demanding a list. The mullahs are demanding a list of all women between 14 and 45 years old as war booty for wives for the Taliban to be Taliban brides. Before August 31st, they were already selling little 9-year-old girls for $500 as the Taliban was coming through. I mean, this is the same Taliban. Yeah. And we already seen right now I think just yesterday it came out that the women aren't allowed to see male doctors anymore, but women also aren't allowed to be educated. So now women don't have any health care anymore because their healthcare has been taken away. Their education has been taken away. They're already back in burqas. They're already getting beat again. They're already being sold off as children, as little girls to be sex slaves. I mean, this isn't the different Taliban. It's the same old Taliban.
Yeah. I remember being in the back of a Hilux back in the early days in Afghanistan and being with one of our Afghan partner force guys there. And we're talking and I just remember thinking, man, like we're going to leave one day, like just thinking of history, just thinking about Vietnam, thinking about the Kurds and then thinking, eventually we're going to leave and what's going to happen to this guy and his family. And I remember thinking that back then. But what happened to Bashir?
He's still running around. He's running around Kabul somewhere. Probably watching these interviews.
Man. Yeah. That's so. Do you think did he get trained up by us? Like, did he pick up all those things, like how to do all this, like through us, or was there a foreign intelligence service also hitting him up? Do you think?
He went through a very intensive training program, from one of our government agencies. Yeah, and was definitely skilled up and trained. And he was, I mean, honestly, like he was one of my favorite guys to work with. Gosh. He was former Northern Alliance, had fought the Taliban before. And he was a pipe hitter, man. He was a violent dude. And I don't know why. I can't tell you why he flipped. Maybe, sometimes they get caught with the circumstances with their family so I don't know what his motivation was. But he had 10 of his Afghan teammates killed and had tried to kill Aziz and me and my friends right now, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, when Aziz left, he was running around Kabul.
Check, man, crazy. And Aziz, I saw you guys on your Instagram doing on a little hunt earlier this last year, I guess. But how's that? How's he adapting and how's everything going?
Well, man, it was the coolest thing, him coming to Texas. He's Texan now. He's got the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat, and he's really embracing it. And he works for our foundation at Mighty Oaks, and just does an amazing job. One of the things he's going to do is he's going to build a SIB program for us at Mighty Oaks because all these interpreters that are here, that did make it here, that served with us for 20 years, they don't have a VA they could go to get the help they're going to need. Not everything's slowed down for them. And so MIT Oaks Foundation, one of the things we want to do is provide some kind of mental and spiritual health transition program to help them transition being Americans and being able to do it healthy. So he's going to be leading that program up for us. And so he's working on that, but he had so many firsts, like, coming to America is like, his wife and his kids, they like first time eating a real hamburger and going to get pizza and going fishing. And I took him skydiving, and I had to do tandem, and I was videoing his tandem jumping. And he's like, man, you took me out of Afghanistan to get me killed in Texas. And
Seriously.
So took him jumping and yeah, so we went hunting, and we were laying in that blind, that in a deer blind, and we were talking, and it just kind of felt like old times. And he's like, we're back hunting again, but no one's shooting back at us.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And it was a real cool moment. And it was that day that cold snap came through, so it was pretty cold.
That's so wild.
But yeah, it was super, super cool. And, one of the things that I want to share that I thought was so cool is when I met Hatra, his wife. This was like 2004. He sees my wife on we didn't have Instagram or FaceTime back then. We had like the Yahoo Messenger. He's seen a video of it, so he was so moved that I let him see my wife. Right, he saw my wife, and my wife's like, "Hey, don't let my husband get killed." And he thought it was so cool that he thought he needed to return the favor and let me meet his wife, which is, as you know, like a big deal for an Afghan wife to be seen by another man, much less an American. Yeah. And so 2004, he does this very awkward introduction where he's like nervous, like sweating because he could be in trouble for it. And his wife's like going to come out of this room, and that's how it's going to happen. I'm going to see her. He's standing in between us, and we're going to get a peek of her, and she's going to go back. So she comes out, and like the only thing's covered, like a little bit of her eyes, and she like kind of pokes out and then goes back away. And that was like such an awkward, it made me uncomfortable, such an awkward thing. But over the years, like she'd pass by and I'd get a glimpse of her, and then she'd make a meal for us in another room, but I'd be able to see her in another room. So over the year, and then when I remember when Mashu was born, I got to actually see her a little bit more. Over the years, we had this relationship. And then when Aziz was actually, we were able to get him out of Afghanistan in Abu Dhabi, I went to the humanitarian center. It was the first time I saw him, and we wrap our arms around each other, and I start crying right away, and he did too. And then his sons came up, and Mash Carr, his youngest, wraps his arms around me, and he's like, "Uncle Chad," and I start crying again. And across the room is Hatra, and she's standing. All the kids came up and gave me a hug, but she's standing in the back, but her face is fully uncovered, and she puts her hand over her heart. She says, "Tasha Carr, thank you," and then just real traditional Afghan. But then 9 months later, I'm coming back from Ukraine, and I rush back from Ukraine to come because they're in my driveway. And I see my dog running through the yard with Mash Carr, and Aziz is waiting, and I jump out the car and I give Aziz a big hug. And right behind him is Hatra, and she wraps her arms around me in this giant hug, and she's like, "Thank you, brother." Wow. And this so it's like, for me, it's like probably one of the most beautiful things, this transition of where we met, just in the glimpse of her in her house in Kabul, 2004 to all the way till now. And now we're just like, man, she's so funny. We have a blast. She's learning English, and I took her. They'd never been to movies before, and she's like, Kabul didn't have any trees, and so she calls the woods here in Texas the jungle, and she thinks something's gonna come out and eat her. So I took Aziz was out of town, and I took her and the kids to see Jurassic Park at the theater. Nice. And didn't realize how real that would seem to them. Yeah. So she's like, "What are you doing to me?" That's wild. It's just been a really cool experience, man. It's I just feel so blessed, and it's like super, super surreal that when sometimes we're doing stuff together, I'm like, "You're here!" Like, it's so crazy that you're actually here and you're safe. And not only that, like he got that congressional. Now I don't know that any Afghans got a congressional. I think it's the first time in history that any Afghans got a congressional level recognition for the operation with those 4 team guys. And for him to get that recognition is like, man, I couldn't be happier because he deserves it. He deserves it, and it represents every Afghan that hadn't been recognized, or that were told they wouldn't fight for their country, or that are still stuck there. Aziz gets to represent them being acknowledged for what they did for us, and it makes me happy. That's amazing.
And there's still some people over there. Are you still working to get people out of Afghanistan? There's somebody you mentioned not too long ago, Lieutenant Abdul Shari.
Abdul Safi. He's so in Afghanistan, by the way, there's still 75,000 allied interpreters there that qualify for SIV. With their family members, there's 300,000. The the State Department's moving like 200 a week, which would take 142 years for it to actually happen. So, so it's just not happening. But Abdul Safi was a commando, special operations level guy. Worked with a lot of SF guys. So those SF guys have really helped him move from Afghanistan to the United States. He went through 10 countries and they were moving him in houses, sending him money. He makes it to the southern border. And he's coming to the United States to seek asylum. I mean, he had a rough journey to 10 countries he's went through. Got accused of being Taliban, got beaten down in Panama. He makes it to the southern border, crosses the southern border with 100 other Latin American people, from Mexico and all over. And he's the only one that gets arrested. And he seeks us. He says, "I'm an Afghan. I'm a commando. My special forces buddies helped me get here. I'm seeking asylum from the Taliban." He's the only one that gets arrested. He gets arrested. The White House responds back that he needs to contact his consulate, which, by the way, we know is the Taliban.
Oh my gosh.
The people he's seeking asylum from. And so we've really worked to bring public attention to it, wrote a letter to the White House. We've had I think 10 organizations, nonprofits, including my own at Mighty Oaks Foundation, get behind it and say, President Biden, this guy, if you send him back to Afghanistan, he will be executed for what he did for our country. He is a Afghan commando, special operations trained. He has all the paperwork. It's not a question of who he is, validated pictures with generals and stuff like that. Legit commando. And he's seeking asylum, which is why we have an asylum process. And so we're trying to put the pressure on the White House to do the right thing. And, anybody listening, if you want to participate in that, call your congressman, your senator, and Abdul Safi is his name. We have to do the right thing. He'll be executed if he goes back.
So where is he now? He's just in the United States somewhere, or is he in a holding facility, or? He's
still arrested and in a holding facility and is still up in the air. I mean, as we know officially, he's being told he's going to be sent back.
Wow.
But I personally believe that, with the tension we have, it would be embarrassment politically for anybody to send him back and have him executed, because we've got a lot of tension on it. So I know Sarah Berardo, who's one of the big efforts behind our effort to do all the evacuations, she's been a big advocate for it, and Mighty Oaks is behind him, and so we're trying to do the right thing for him. And I think the American people, I know the media put out, a lot of people have contacted a congressman, and that's one of the best things you could do is, as a constituent, hey, congressman, we want to see the right thing done for our allies.
Wow. Jeez. Amazing. And then you've kept going. So Mighty Oaks Foundation has been working to get American citizens out of Ukraine. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, originally went to Ukraine, and we had somebody on the ground right before the invasion because we knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. The guy Seaspray that we talk about in Saving Aziz. He's, very experienced special operator from military and government agencies. And he was on the ground there. And I went a week after the invasion, got on the ground. And initially we did rescue operations because, I was take a step back. In Afghanistan, we needed to rescue mass numbers because no one could get in Afghanistan and do that. In Ukraine, people were able to drive across the border, open a bus door, and load people up. So what makes special operations special? You do things other people can't do. So we weren't trying to get the big numbers. We were trying to get people who were in positions the way they couldn't get rescued. And so we're working they had some handicapped people. We got some handicapped people out. They were stuck in, elderly people, political people that couldn't move. And our political people, Americans, that couldn't really move. They were stuck in. And if you're familiar with Benjamin Hall, the Fox News reporter, we got a call that Benjamin Hall was catastrophically wounded. Probably had about 48 hours to live. He lost several limbs and an eye. And so we were able to go in and extract Benjamin Hall from Kiev while I was under attack. Russia at that time, Russia was trying to take Kiev, so it was under attack. We went in to do that and actually successfully got him out. And then the next day, actually, Sasha, his Fox News correspondent, was killed. The only thing left of her is her arm. The two Ukrainian security guys were obliterated. And then Pierre, his cameraman of 25 years at Fox, he did a lot of stuff in Afghanistan, and pretty amazing dude. He was killed. A piece of shrapnel went through his leg, and he was actually not as injured as Benjamin Hall, but he took a piece of shrapnel right through the carotid, right through the femoral, and bled out. And so we were not going to go back and get him because we weren't going to risk, losing guys to go into Kiev while I was under attack. but his wife showed up in Poland, was like, hey, I want my husband. And we were a bunch of softies, and we're like, okay. So we went back and got Pierre. I actually drove him out in a hearse. He was in a hearse, and we were going to move him in our vehicle, but he was like really respectfully put in there, strapped down in his hearse, and he had his coffin in there. And we made sure it was him. And then he's Irish, so they had an Irish flag like thrown in the back. And our guys, we put the stars over their head and the stripes down to their feet. And so I looked up on Google, like, how do you put it? And so we put the green, the orange, the white and the orange, put it the right way. And then I was like, man, we can't. He's like, we have to take him back in his hearse. So I told the hearse driver, I'm like, hey, we're going to buy your hearse. And he's like, well, it's not for sale. I'm like, you understand? Like, either I'm taking your hearse and I'm going to steal it from you, or we're buying it. So here's Fox News on the phone, like, strike a deal of your life. And so he sold this hearse to Fox News, and I drove him out and back to his wife, Michelle, and was able to deliver him back with dignity. And so we stayed there and did some of that stuff. But now Mighty Oaks is going to the front lines and remote areas. Like, we've been to like Kharkiv and Izum and Odessa, and we're helping the Ukrainian troops that are fighting for their freedom. I mean, I don't care about. I've been accused of, like, why are you over there helping? Zelensky's corrupt and Ukraine's corrupt. And I'm like, so is every politician in history, including our own. Like, I don't care about the politics behind it. We care about helping people. And these people don't deserve what's happening to them. No country deserves a world superpower coming in and firing ballistic missiles the size of telephone poles into apartment complexes and retirement communities and using chemical weapons. These are legit war crimes. And these people are they don't care about war or politics. They care about going milk their goat and tend to their farm and living their way of life. And they want that back, and they're fighting for their freedom and their way of life. And so, our heart's just there to help them. We've been bringing medical equipment to them and then teaching them how to use it. So, like, the last trip, we brought a bunch of IFACs, individual first aid kits that go inside their ballistic vests. And then we brought a 18 Delta instructor, which is Special Forces medic instructor, a trauma doctor, there to teach them actually how to use it. Here's a tourniquet, here's how to use it. Here's a depressure valve for overinflated young. Here's how you do a sucking chest wound. Like, actually teaching them how to use it, because they don't know how to use any of this stuff. And then we use that rapport that we're building to bring our Mighty Oaks mental and spiritual resiliency program, and that's really helped them to have the right mindset, because most of these guys aren't professional soldiers. And so Mighty Oaks does that really well. And we brought these audio Bible tracks, which are like on little thumb drives, and we've given out thousands of those, and just to help and encourage them, and just let them know that, if anything else, let them know that people care. Yeah. That goes a long way sometimes too, to know they're like shocked, like, why'd you come here from America, like, to come here? And it's like, people care. Like, I didn't buy this stuff. Like, people donate to buy this stuff because people care about what you're going through. And that goes a long way with them. So we've been doing that, and it's been an amazing effort. Mighty Oaks, Mercury One has been a big partner with us with some of our resources, Samaritan's Purse, Save Our Allies is out there doing some great stuff. So yeah, it's been pretty humbling to go out there and be able to help. Yeah. And we're going to keep doing it.
Man, wild. Well, Saving Aziz is January 17th. It is out. And is the first book then, the first book also, Unfair Advantage. It seems like these things should be movies.
Well, and Unfair Advantage was going to be picked up for a film. And then COVID happened. And so it was kind of on the back burner. And then they were about to start again. And then this happened. And then Saving Aziz got picked up already.
Wow.
So Saving Aziz is picked up, and it's already got fully independently funded. So it's they're not trying to raise money for anything. It's funded, ready to go. And so right now they're interviewing for a writer director, and then they're gonna get moving on it. And it's gonna cover, I think, like a lot of the Afghan evac stories. It'll cover the airport, but it's really gonna be a movie about me and Aziz's relationship, that relationship between two brothers who were there for each other for all these years, and it's going to go all the way into the Tajikistan stuff, and just wanted to be a really encouraging movie of that covers how many people actually came together and did the right thing. Man. So yeah, it's pretty excited about it, and definitely willing to share more offline with you about it. But it is going to be coming out. I'd say probably in like 18 to 24 months as a film.
Amazing. And gosh. What a couple of years, what a 25 years that you've had, but incredible. And then people can also check out Send Me, a documentary that captures some of what you guys went through on the ground there, the story behind the evacuation. Send Me, Save Our Allies. You've been busy, man.
It's been a busy. There's a quote that Mother Teresa said that that God will never give you more than you can handle. I just wish you didn't trust me so much. And that's kind of how I felt this last 2 years.
That is fantastic. And there's one thing I heard you say in one of your interviews is about somebody they're asking you, or you're hearing, people say, "Hey, was it worth it?" And this answer that you gave, you said, it doesn't have to be worth it.
Yeah. It was actually Seaspray that said that. We were getting interviewed, and I got asked the question before, why are you doing it? Why are you helping these people that not from your country, you don't even know them? And I think the simple answer is just the right thing to do, right? And there's never a wrong time. I've heard this a long time ago. It's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And if you have the ability to help, someone in need, then you should. That should be a life principle. Like if you have the ability and someone's in need, then you should help and you should do the right thing. But then Seaspray's asked this other question, and it really caught me off guard when it was asked, but is it worth it? And he said, it doesn't have to be, but it doesn't have to be worth it to do the right thing. And I think oftentimes, especially in America, we try to find an ROI on anything we do, right? We have to have a return on investment. I'll give my time, I'll give my money, I'll give my energy or something, but what am I getting out of it? What's the return on investment for it? And I think sometimes, we need to put that aside and say, if it's the right thing to do, it doesn't have to be worth it. And that includes our personal safety and assurances. Because I could tell you one of the biggest bashings we got when we were doing this were people saying, like, you guys are idiots, you guys are a bunch of cowboys, you're going to get yourself killed. People are actually wishing death. People are like, I hope you guys die out there, because then you'll get exactly what you're asking for. And people are saying all these horrible things. It's like, you don't think the group of us know that it's dangerous doing what we're doing? Of course we do. I got a wife at home. I got 3 kids and grandkids. Like, I don't want to die like doing this. But when you feel compelled to do something, sometimes you just have to do it. And I'm not a thrill seeker. One of the criteria I had for picking the 12 guys that came was none of them had to have that, oh, I need to go get some, like, kind of attitude. Like, they all guys that had already got some, and they weren't looking for that. They were all experienced, mature adults that were not looking for any trouble, not looking to get themselves hurt or killed. None of us wanted to get hurt, but it was like, it was a question, right? Is it worth it? And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to. There's no personal assurance or guarantees for our safety, but these people needed someone to help, and unfortunately, the governments of the world didn't. And so we did. And a lot of people, aside from us, made it possible to do that. And I'll forever be grateful for a grateful nation of Americans and people, and our Jewish friends that made the donation. People from around the world, all the organizations that are part of it, not just Save Our Allies or Mighty Oaks or Independent, everyone that was involved. I'll forever be grateful that people stood up and did the right thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Thank you for sharing your story and for writing that book. And man, I'm looking forward to the film. And let's stay on. I want to hear some behind the scenes stuff. But thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And man, thanks for all you do.
Thank you so much, Jack.
Take care, man. We all know how finances can take a major hit during the holiday season. That's why you need to go to NavyFederal.org and check out everything that they have going on. I have been a member since 1996, and I could not be more pleased with how all of that has gone. Partner up with Navy Federal Credit Union to pay down credit card debt. You could get into low APR on balance transfers with their Platinum credit card. It's their lowest rate card, and it's a great tool to pay down debt. Navy Federal can even help get you started on your next home improvement project. They offer home equity line of credit with convenient access to funds when you need them at a variable rate. You can also get a fixed rate equity loan that has set monthly payments for large purchases. Consolidating debt with a home equity loan can also streamline and lower your monthly payments. Learn more at NavyFederal.org, where their members are the mission. Insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender. Membership required. Loans subject to approval. Call 1-888-842-6328 for details about credit card costs and terms. HELOC APR as low as 6.5% as of November 23rd, 2022. Black Rifle Coffee Company. the coffee that I drink every single day and powers me through my novels. Black Rifle Coffee Company set out on a mission to make the best cup of coffee that's ever hit your mug. The dream was to sell enough premium coffee to be able to build a support network for veterans, first responders, and law enforcement. Thanks to your support, all that dream has become a reality. Black Rifle Coffee is roasted by a veteran-led team of brilliant coffee graders here in the United States who work tirelessly to roast and bag the highest quality coffee right here in America. The coffee is truly one of a kind, but it's your support that gets gear, funding, and supplies into the hands of those on our front lines. This year alone, your support has helped Black Rifle Coffee Company expand our team of active duty service members, veterans, and veteran family members. Black Rifle was also able to donate over 120,000 bags of coffee to veterans and first responders in 2022, all thanks to you. Purchase at blackriflecoffee.com and use code DangerClose20 at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. That's blackriflecoffee.com and use code DangerClose20. You can also find Black Rifle Coffee in grocery and convenience stores near you. Black Rifle Coffee, America's coffee. Thank you so much to Sig Sauer for jumping right on board out of the gate to make this podcast possible. Obviously, I am a huge Sig fan, having carried the P226 on every deployment downrange in the SEAL teams. But Sig was a supporter. They were friends well before I was a New York Times bestselling author, well before I even had an Instagram account or any social media presence whatsoever. So thank you guys all so much. Ron, Tom, Jason, everybody at SIG who gets up every day and continues to crush it and lead the way. SIG is always adapting. They're always at the forefront, whether it is firearms for citizens, whether it's firearms for our military, ammo, suppressors, optics, training, fire control units. They are doing it all, and they are always pushing that envelope and trying to do it better each and every day through innovation and adaptation. They crush. So thank you so much for that friendship and support. It will never be forgotten. Welcome to the gear highlight portion of the Danger Close podcast. First off, I get a lot of questions about this desk right here. And yes, it is a custom desk because it has the cross tomahawks burnt into the top here. And it is from badass-workbench.com. So check them out. Awesome crew. They brought this thing out here in the back of a truck. It's got seats on all four sides that swing out. It's just awesome. And it is solid. There's a reason it's called Badass Workbench. So check them out for sure. And let's see. Oh, on that podcast I just did, we talked a little bit about veteran suicide. And this shirt, I just so happened to be wearing this shirt right here. It says "You Matter." And this is from the Boot Campaign. So Boot Campaign, once again, awesome group of people out there. And it's bootcampaign.org. So be sure and go and check them out and support the great work that they are doing. And 511, man, thank you guys so much for sending out a nice little care package. Sincerely appreciated. 511 Tactical. They made some great sweatshirts for the Terminalist, also for the Chris Pratt Terminalist series that came out this past summer. They had some Terminalist sweatshirts. So guys, thank you so much for hooking it up. Sincerely appreciated. SIG. All right, right here, what is this? Well, this is the SIG P210, and this is the carry right here. So that's how you carry it, and bam. But check that out. This thing, solid. I love this pistol. So this might just end up being a new daily carry for me because it is so solid. But check it out, the P210, and you might find it in the pages of my next novel as well. So SIG, thank you. All right, Bill Rapier at Amtac Blades. Go to amtacblades.com. And right here, this is a new blade right here. And look at that. Oh, yeah. Bill Rapier, of course, SEAL team buddy. And right here, this is the Northman X right here. So love what Bill is doing over there. Amtac shooting, Amtac blades. Check them both out. Great sheath right here. And then, of course, the trainer. But super important, other than just having the blade, is training with the blade. So be sure and hit up one of Bill's shooting courses, one of his blade courses. He's doing great stuff out there. So Bill, thank you so much. Sincerely appreciated. Right here, bam, Amtac blades. All right. And speaking of former SEALs, right here, Nick Norris, Protect right here. And this, they do have a bunch of supplements, but right here, this is their sunscreen. So SPF 30 Reef Safe right there. So go check them out. And that is PROTEKT, Protect. Awesome. So Nick will be on the podcast here very soon. And Glenn Eberly at Eberly Stock, who has been on the podcast before, right here. This is the Gunslinger 2-pack. If you haven't listened to that podcast, Glenn Eberly is an incredible guy, amazing story, so humble. I just love this company and what they're doing. So check out that podcast and check out Glenn Eberly and Eberly Stock. Thank you, guys. All right. I think that is it for today. Take care out there. You know there are different grades of fuel for your vehicle, but did you know there's different grades of fuel for your mind? When your mind gets low-quality fuel, it gets easily distracted, fatigues quickly, and leaves you swamped in brain fog. But when it gets high-quality fuel that's packed with the electrolytes it needs to operate at optimal levels, your brain cells fire more quickly and efficiently, which keeps you focused, energized, and ready for anything. That's why Navy SEAL veteran Nick Norris created Protect Hydration. It's an electrolyte supplement that contains the optimal ratio of electrolytes your mind needs without any of the sugar, artificial sweeteners, or other junk it doesn't. And people love it so much, it sold out 3 times in 2022. They just got some back in stock right now. Danger Close listeners can get 25% off. Visit Protect, PROTEKT.com/DangerClose and start giving your mind higher quality fuel today. Once again, visit Protect, PROTEKT.com/DangerClose for 25% off. Thank you for tuning in to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. My next novel, Only the Dead, hits shelves this spring and is available for pre-order now. Go to officialjackcarr.com, click on Only the Dead for a sneak peek. Find out more about my guest, Chad Robichaux, at Chad, ChadRobichaux.com. And you can go to all his social media from there. But Instagram is Chad, ChadRobo_official. But go to that website, hit all his social media there, and be sure and pick up his book, Saving Aziz, which is on shelves January 17th. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. Go to officialjackcarr.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. You can also click on shop for the merch. And until the next time, take care out there. Stay safe. Be strong. Keep fighting.